Captain's log. Station Helios Alpha. Date, 3rd cycle, 47th day. Time, 2:40 a.m. Universal Standard. The emergency strobes have just switched to a low-frequency amber pulse. It is not a fire. It is not a hull breach. It is the sun. Our long-range solar monitors at the L1 Lagrange point have just sent a Priority 1 burst. An X-class solar flare has erupted from active region 3582. It is a massive one, a solar needle threading the eye of our orbit. Right now, first wave of radiation, the light-speed photons, X-rays, and gamma rays, has already reached us. They travel at the speed of light, crossing the void in just 8 minutes. The sensors on the outer hull are already chirping, a soft, frantic metallic song, as they record the sudden spike in ionizing energy. But the light is just the warning. The real weight is coming behind it, a coronal mass ejection, a CME, a billion-ton cloud of magnetized plasma, traveling at millions of kilometers per hour. It is a tidal wave of protons and electrons, and we are directly in its path. I am sitting here on the command deck, listening to the station transition into its defensive posture. It is a series of heavy mechanical groans as the external sensors retract into their lead-lined housings. We are pulling in our antenna, folding our solar wings, and turning the station's spine to face the oncoming storm. Everything is slow. Everything is deliberate. In space, you do not panic. Panic is a luxury for those with air to breathe and ground beneath their feet. Here, we follow the checklist. We rely on the math. I have spent the last 20 minutes reviewing the telemetry. The flux levels are rising steadily. On the monitor, the sun looks like a boiling ocean, and that white flash, that tiny brilliant spark on its edge, is the event that is currently rushing toward us through the dark. It looks beautiful from this distance. It is hard to remember that it is a hammer falling. I can hear the hum of the magnetic shield starting to spool up. It is a deep, subsonic vibration that starts in the floor plates and travels up through the soles of my boots. It is a comforting sound, like a giant purring cat. These fields are our first line of defense, a bubble of invisible force, designed to deflect the charged particles of the plasma cloud, much like the Earth's magnetosphere protects the world below. But a magnetic field can only do so much against an X-class event. It is like trying to hold back a hurricane with a silk curtain. The real work happens deep inside the station, in the shielding, and in the discipline of the crew. I have already issued the order for all non-essential personnel to move to the central core. We call it the vault. It is the most protected part of the station, buried under layers of fuel tanks, water reserves, and heavy polyethylene shielding. I stay here a little longer, watching the stars. They do not know the sun is angry. They remain cold and indifferent. I find myself thinking about the sheer scale of what is happening. Solar flares are a release of magnetic energy equivalent to millions of nuclear bombs detonating at once. It is the sun's way of breathing, a violent exhale that reshapes the local neighborhood of space, and we're just a tiny speck of metal and glass, trying to stay out of the way. I check the radiation dosimeter on my wrist. The needle is still in the green, but the digits are climbing. 0.5 millisieverts per hour, 0.8, 1.2. On Earth, the average person receives about 3 millisieverts in an entire year. Here, we will take more than that in an afternoon, but the station is built for this. We are prepared. I take a sip of lukewarm coffee and listen to the ventilation system slow down. We are recycling the air now, closing the external vents to prevent any potential ozone buildup from the high-energy particles. The station is becoming a closed system, a sealed tomb of air and hope. The silence on the bridge is becoming heavier now. As the electronics enter harden mode, the screens dim to a deep crimson, and the cooling fans drop to a lower frequency. It is a sleep-inducing atmosphere, if it were not for the knowledge of the storm outside. I pull up the technical schematics of our shielding. Most people think of lead when they think of radiation, but in space, lead is not always the best choice. When a high-energy proton hits a heavy metal like lead, it can shatter the atoms of the shield itself, creating a secondary shower of radiation that can be even more dangerous. No, out here we use hydrogen. Hydrogen is the king of shielding. It has the same mass as a proton, so when a solar particle hits it, it is like a billiard ball hitting another of the same size. The energy is absorbed and dissipated. That is why our central core is surrounded by the station's water supply. Hundreds of thousands of liters of recycled water, stored in thick, wrap-around tanks. It is a liquid blanket. We also use high-density polyethylene, a plastic rich in hydrogen atoms. As I walk through the corridors toward the core, I can see the polyethylene panels bolted to the walls, thick, white slabs that look like wax. They feel cold to the touch. It is a strange thought, knowing that my life depends on the same material used to make milk jugs and shopping bags, just refined and layered. I run my hand over the surface of the bulkhead, feeling the vibration of the station's bones. The hum is louder here. The magnetic shield is working hard. I pass the engineering bay, where the last of the technicians are securing the backup batteries. We have to be careful about geomagnetically induced currents. When the CME hits, it can create massive surges in any long conductor, like our station's power lines. If we are not careful, the flare can fry our electronics from the inside out, turning our own wiring into a heater that melts the circuit boards. We have disconnected all non-essential loops. We are running on a star grid now, isolated clusters of power that can be shut down instantly if a surge is detected. It is a delicate dance between maintaining enough power to stay alive and keeping the station from burning itself out. The lights flicker, a brief, stuttering yellow light, before the emergency stabilizers kick in. It is starting. The leading edge of the Proton storm is beginning to interact with our hull. I reach the entrance to the vault. The door is a massive slab of composite material, 30 centimeters thick. Inside, the crew is settled. They are lying on their bunks, reading or talking in low voices. The atmosphere is calm. I have made sure we have extra hydration for everyone. Radiation causes oxidative stress in the body. It creates free radicals that can damage DNA, water, antioxidants, and rest are the best defenses. We have also distributed dosimetry badges to everyone. They are small plastic squares that change color if the radiation dose exceeds safe limits. Right now, everyone is still in the clear. I take my seat in the small command chair in the corner of the vault. This will be my home for the next 12 to 18 hours. I pull up the external camera feed on a small handheld tablet. The view is distorted by snow, tiny white speckles dancing across the image. That is not a camera glitch. Those are individual solar protons striking the camera's sensor. The sky is literally screaming with energy. The snow on the screen is getting thicker. It looks like a blizzard in deep space, a whiteout of invisible fire. I can almost imagine the sound of it, a trillion tiny needles tapping against the titanium skin of the station. In reality, it is silent. The most dangerous things in the universe often are. I find myself explaining the biology of the event to my junior officer, more to keep his mind busy than anything else. I tell him about the double strand breaks. When a high-speed proton passes through a human cell, it can act like a microscopic bullet, snapping the ladder of the DNA molecule. If the cell cannot repair it, it either dies or it mutates. Our bodies are amazing at repair, but when you are hit by a storm like this, it is a race against time. The station's hull is groaning under the thermal stress. One side of us is facing the sun, absorbing the raw heat of the flare, while the other side faces the absolute zero of the shadows. The metal is expanding and contracting, making long, low popping sounds that echo through the ventilation shafts. It sounds like a ghost walking through the walls. I check the magnetic field readings. The magnetosphere of the station is bowing under the pressure of the solar wind. The plasma cloud is arriving. This is the moment where the magnetic fields of the sun and the station interlock. If the magnetic polarity is southward, we are in for a rough ride. It is called magnetic reconnection. The solar energy can literally leak into our shielding, funnel down the field lines like water through a funnel. I feel a strange sensation in my eyes, a tiny, bright flash of light, even though I am looking at a dim screen in a dark room. It is a phosphine. A high-energy particle just passed through my skull and struck my retina, creating a false signal of light. It is a common experience for astronauts during solar events. It is a reminder that no matter how much water and plastic we put between us and the sun, we are never truly separate from the universe. We are part of the physics of this system. I tell the crew to keep their eyes closed as much as possible, to rest, to let the water in their bodies absorb the energy. We are all just containers of hydrogen, after all. The station's master alarm gives a single low-frequency chime. The CME has officially arrived. The magnetic sensors are off the charts. Outside, if we could see it with our naked eyes, the station would be shrouded in a brilliant, dancing aurora of violet and green as the particles spiral around our shields. It would be a sight of unimaginable beauty, a celestial firework display, but we are tucked away in the dark, listening to the hum of the pumps and the rhythmic breathing of 20 people. The pressure is holding. The air is sweet and cool. We are in the belly of the whale, waiting for the storm to pass over us. I record the final entry for this hour of the log. Status: nominal. Shields holding at 84%. Crew comfort is high. We are sitting in the shadow of our own engineering, watching the sun scream into the void. I lean back, the chair creaking softly, and close my eyes. The flashes come again, tiny sparks of cosmic light in the darkness of my mind. The peak of the Coronal Mass Ejection is now washing over the station like a silent, invisible tide of fire. I can feel the change in the air, a certain static charge that makes the hair on my arm stand up. Even here in the reinforced safety of the vault, on the bridge, I know the consoles are struggling. Even with the hardening, the sheer density of the proton flux is beginning to cause what we call single event upsets, SEUs. These are tiny, chaotic moments where a single high-energy particle strikes a memory chip and flips a bit from a 0 to a 1. It is like a microscopic ghost reaching into the station's brain and changing a single letter in a million-page book. Most of the time, our error-correcting code catches it, a silent digital sigh as the system rights itself. But occasionally, a bit flips in a critical system. A valve might twitch. A light might flicker for no reason. A sensor might report a temperature that does not exist. It is the station's way of dreaming under the influence of the sun's fever. I am monitoring the telemetry from my handheld unit, watching the power grid fluctuations. The long copper lines running through the station's spine are acting like massive antennas, picking up the electromagnetic turbulence of the solar wind. We call this geomagnetic induction, and it is the enemy of every circuit. I can hear the hum of the transformers adjusting to the load, a deep rhythmic thrumming that sounds like the station is breathing in a heavy, troubled sleep. It is a hypnotic sound. I find myself matching my own breathing to the cycle of the power stabilizers, in and out, rise and fall. We are currently drawing power from the chemical fuel cells, having completely disconnected the solar arrays to prevent them from being scorched by the plasma. It feels primitive, relying on chemical reactions rather than the light of the star, but it is safe. It is a closed loop, a small fire burning in the dark to keep the cold and the radiation at bay. I look around at the crew. Most of them are drifting off now. The low amber light of the emergency lamps and the steady white noise of the air scrubbers are a powerful sedative. It is funny how the human mind works. Faced with a cosmic event that could unravel our very genetic code, we choose to nap. But maybe that is the most logical response. There is nothing we can do out here but wait and trust in the shielding. I think about the layers of protection surrounding us. Beyond the water tanks, there is the polyethylene, and beyond that, the aluminum alloy of the hull, and finally, the magnetic bubble we have projected 3 kilometers into the void. It is a series of Russian nesting dolls with us as the tiny, fragile center. I think about the history of solar observations, how the Carrington event of 1859 would have crippled our modern world. Back then, it just made telegraph wire spark, and the northern lights visible in the Caribbean. If that happened today, it would be a technological apocalypse. But here, we are prepared. We are the watchers on the wall, and our wall is made of hydrogen and magnetism. The station gives a long, low groan, metallic sound of expansion that echoes through the deck plates. It is the thermal creep. The sunward side of the hull is now several hundred degrees hotter than the shadow side. The station is literally bending, just a few millimeters, under the strain of the temperature gradient. I close my eyes and try to visualize the station as it must look from the outside. A tiny silver needle, bathed in the violent, blowing shroud of the solar wind. I imagine the protons screaming past us at 2 million kilometers per hour, a torrent of energy that would kill a man in minutes if he were to step outside. But inside, it is quiet. There is the smell of filtered air, the faint scent of recycled water, and the distant, metallic taste of ozone that always accompanies a major radiation event. It is a taste that stays with you, a reminder that the vacuum is always trying to get in, always trying to reclaim the space we have borrowed. I check the clock. 5 minutes since the last log entry. The storm is just beginning to settle into its long, punishing rhythm. There is a specific kind of silence that only exists in a radiation shelter during a storm. It is not the absence of sound, but the presence of a very specific, pressurized quiet. I am leaning back in my chair, listening to the water tanks. The water is our best friend right now. It does not just block the radiation, it absorbs the noise. The sound of the station's machinery is muffled by the thousands of liters of liquid surrounding the vault. It feels like being in a submarine, deep beneath the ocean, protected from the crushing weight of the world above. But our ocean is the vacuum, and our weight is the high-energy particles from the sun. I think about the chemistry of what is happening in our bodies right now. Even with the shieldings, some of the most energetic particles, the GCRs, or galactic cosmic rays, are still getting through. They are like cosmic bullets, passing through the hull, the water, and our bodies, as if we were not even there. I explained to the junior medic, who is sitting nearby, about the rad hardening of the human spirit. We have all been taking our antioxidant supplements, vitamin C, vitamin E, and a specialized compound designed to scavenge the free radicals that radiation creates in the bloodstream. When a proton hits a water molecule in your body, it can create a hydroxyl radical, a highly reactive fragment that wants to grab onto anything it can find, including your DNA. The antioxidants act like a cellular shield, neutralizing these fragments before they can do any real damage. It is a microscopic war being fought in every cell of our bodies. I tell him to think of it as a cleaning crew, working overtime to repair the small cracks in the foundation of our biology. He nods, his eyes heavy with sleep, and I can see the tension in his shoulders beginning to fade. Knowledge is the best defense against the what-ifs. I pull up the long-range sensor data on my tablet. The solar flare is still active, a massive loop of plasma, a prominence, extending hundreds of thousands of kilometers into space. It looks like a glowing red umbilical cord connecting the sun to the void. The amount of mass being ejected is staggering. If Earth were a marble, this prominence could wrap around it 10 times. We are just a mote of dust caught in the wake of this giant. I find myself feeling a strange sense of humility. We spend our lives thinking we are the masters of our environment, but out here, you realize that we are only here by the sun's permission. It provides the light that gives us life, but it can also take it away with a single sudden breath. It is a balance, a cosmic contract that we have signed, and today is one of the days where the terms are being reviewed. The snow on the cameras is so thick now that the image is almost pure white. It is as if the station is flying through a sea of milk. I check the external temperature sensors. The hull is holding at 140 degrees Celsius on the sunward side. Our radiators, located in the shadows, are working at maximum capacity, glowing a dull cherry red as they dump the excess heat into the void. It is a beautiful engineering solution, using the cold of space to fight the heat of the star. I take a slow, deep breath, feeling the coolness of the air in my lungs. We have lowered the oxygen levels slightly to reduce the risk of fire during the electronic surges. It makes you feel a little lightheaded, a little more relaxed. It is a common trick in high-stress environments. Keep the crew slightly oxygen-starved, and they stay calm, they stay quiet, they sleep. And sleep is exactly what they need right now, to let their bodies do the work of repair. The hum of the station continues, a low, steady drone that feels like it is vibrating right in the center of my skull. It is the sound of survival. I had been watching the snow on the monitors for 10 minutes now, lost in the hypnotic dance of the static. It is a strange thing to see the invisible made visible. Every white speck is a physical interaction between a piece of our technology and a piece of the sun. It is a reminder that the universe is a very crowded place, even in the empty spaces between the planets. I find my thoughts drifting to the concept of the magnetic reconnection. It is what happens when the magnetic field lines of the sun snap and reform, releasing all that stored energy in a single, violent burst. It is the same physics that powers the aurora borealis, the same physics that can melt a transformer on a city street in Ohio or London. We are currently in the middle of a massive reconnection event. The magnetic field around the station is twisting and buckling, trying to find a stable configuration in the face of the solar wind. The lights in the vault flicker again, 3 long pulses, followed by a short one. It is the emergency backup system testing the load. It makes the shadows on the wall jump, stretching and contracting like something alive. For a second, just a tiny fraction of a heartbeat, I feel that drug, the what if, that every captain carries in the back of their mind. What if the shielding is not enough? What if the flare is bigger than the sensors predicted? What if a secondary CME is hiding behind the first one, a cannibal flare that will catch us when our batteries are low and our shields are tired? I push the thought away. Logic is my anchor. The math says we are safe. The engineering says we are protected. Fear is just a biological reaction to a lack of control. And out here, control is a carefully constructed illusion anyway. We control what we can, the air, the water, the shields, and we let the universe handle the rest. I check the dosimeter on my belt. The cumulative dose for the last 30 minutes is 2.4 millisieverts. It is higher than I would like, but still well within the limits for a Class X event. We have had worse. In 24, we took a hit that left us in the vault for 3 days. By the end of it, the air was stale and everyone was on edge, but we came out of it with nothing more than a few minor equipment failures and a very high appreciation for the sun's power. This time feels different. The flare is cleaner, more focused. It is a direct hit, but it is consistent. I listen to the sound of the pumps. There is a tiny rhythmic clicking coming from the secondary life support loop. It is a new sound. I make a mental note to check the bearings once the storm passes. In the quiet of the shelter, every new sound is a story. Every vibration is a piece of data. I decide to dim the lights even further, until the vault is almost entirely dark, except for the faint green glow of the status monitors. The crew is a collection of dark shapes in the shadows, their breathing deep and regular. I feel a sense of guardianship. It is my job to stay awake while they sleep, to listen to the station's groans and clicks, so they do not have to. I am the interface between them and the storm. I look at the tablet one last time before resting my eyes. The sun is still there, a giant, angry eye in the dark, but it is starting to calm down. The peak flux has passed. The tsunami has hit the shore, and now we are just dealing with the rising tide. I lean my head back against the padded wall and feel the vibration of the magnetic shield humming through my skull. It is a protective song, a lullaby for the lonely explorers of the deep. We are okay, the station seems to say. We are built for this. We are the shield. I let my eyes close, the phosphine flashes still dancing in my vision, tiny sparks of light from a storm that is still raging just a few meters away. The station is now fully submerged in the thickest part of the solar particle stream. It is no longer just a storm, it is a state of existence. I am sitting in the near darkness of the vault, the only light coming from the faint rhythmic pulse of the life support monitors. I have noticed that when you spend enough time in the silence of a radiation shelter, your senses begin to play tricks on you. You start to hear the electricity. It is a faint, high-pitched whine, the sound of millions of electrons being pushed through the hardened circuits, struggling against the electromagnetic interference of the sun. It is a lonely sound, but also a reassuring one. It means the heart of the station is still beating. I find myself thinking about the concept of Bremsstrahlung, the braking radiation. When those high-speed electrons from the flare are suddenly slowed down by our hull, they release their kinetic energy as X-rays. It is a secondary wave of radiation, a silent byproduct of our own protection. The very act of stopping the storm creates a new, smaller storm inside the walls. I adjust my position in the command chair, the fabric creaking softly. The sound seems to echo for an eternity in the cramped space. I think about the people back on Earth, probably oblivious to the fact that a massive cloud of plasma is currently buffeting their magnetosphere. They might see some beautiful auroras in the northern and southern skies, glowing ribbons of violet and green, but they will not feel the weight of it. They have an entire atmosphere, the equivalent of 10 meters of solid water, protecting them. We have 30 centimeters of polyethylene, and a dream. I checked the external sensors again. The proton flux has plateaued, reaching a staggering intensity. If I were to look out a window right now, which I will not, the stars would be gone, replaced by a chaotic, shimmering haze of light as the particles interact with the station's magnetic bubble. It is a localized apocalypse happening in total silence. I find myself focusing on the smell of the vault. It is a mix of clean, filtered air, the slightly sweet scent of the cooling fluid in the walls, and the unmistakable metallic tang of the station's electrical systems working at maximum capacity. It is the smell of survival. I realize that I have not moved for nearly 20 minutes. My body is trying to conserve energy, to stay still while the storm rages. I think about the DNA in my cells. Right now, in this very second, a stray particle might be passing through my arm, or my chest, or my brain. It is a strange, intimate violation, but I trust the biology. I trust the trillions of years of evolution that have taught our cells how to recognize a broken strand and knit it back together. We are built to endure. We are made of the same stuff as the stars, and perhaps that is why we can survive their anger. The junior officer across from me shifts in his sleep, his breathing heavy and regular. I wonder what he is dreaming about. Is he back on Earth, walking through a forest? Or is his mind processing the strange, flickering flashes of the phosphenes? I decide to run a diagnostic on the secondary water filtration system. It is a mindless task, a way to keep my fingers moving and my brain occupied with something other than the what-if. The pumps are steady, the pressure is optimal, the water is doing its job, standing guard between us and the fire. I find a certain peace in the technicality of it all. The numbers do not lie. The physics does not have an agenda. As long as the integrity of the shielding remains, we are safe. I watch the snow on the tablet screen, the white speckles now so dense they look like a solid wall of static. It is the sun's way of talking to us, a loud, chaotic broadcast of pure energy. I lean back and close my eyes, letting the deep, subsonic hum of the magnetic shields vibrate through my spine. It feels like a protective embrace, a heavy, invisible shield that says, "Not today. Not this time." The clock on the wall ticks forward with agonizing slowness. Time feels different during a radiation event. It stretches and warps, becoming thin and translucent, much like the shielding we are currently relying on for our very lives. I have been sitting here, leaning back in the command chair, listening to the muffled gurgle of the water tanks surrounding us. It is a strange thing to realize that your life depends on a liquid blanket. Most people on Earth never think about the weight of the atmosphere above them, but here, we are acutely aware of every centimeter of protection. The water in these tanks is our primary shield against the high-energy protons streaming off the sun. Water is rich in hydrogen, and hydrogen is the ultimate stopper for these particles. It is a game of subatomic billiards. The protons from the flare hit the hydrogen atoms in the water and lose their energy, dissipating into heat, rather than punching through into our bodies. I can hear the circulation pumps working at a low, steady hum, keeping the water moving so that it does not develop thermal hotspots. It is a comforting, rhythmic sound, like the heartbeat of the station itself. I think about the construction of this vault. It is not just a room. It is a masterpiece of material science, a fortress built in the middle of a vacuum. Beyond the water tanks, we have layers of ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. It is a specialized plastic, dense with even more hydrogen, and infused with boron. Boron is an incredible element. It has a high cross-section for neutron capture. When the solar protons hit our hull, they sometimes knock neutrons loose from the metal atoms. This is the secondary radiation I mentioned earlier. These neutrons are slow and sneaky, but the boron in the plastic catches them like a catcher's mitt, neutralizing them before they can reach the crew. I run my hand along the edge of the console, feeling the slight, almost imperceptible vibration of the air scrubbers. They are working harder now, pulling out the ozone that builds up as high-energy particles ionize the air molecules inside the station. It gives the air a sharp, metallic tang, a smell that I have come to associate with the sun's anger. It is the smell of physics in action. I check the radiation levels in the habitat ring, just outside this reinforced sanctuary. The sensors there are reporting levels nearly 10 times higher than what we are receiving in here. It is a stark, terrifying reminder of why we hide. Out there in the main corridors, the air is thick with invisible fire. In here, we have created a sanctuary of cool, dark quiet. I find my thoughts drifting to the history of solar observations. I think about the solar particle event of August 1972. It happened right between the Apollo 16 and Apollo 17 missions. If astronauts had been on the lunar surface or in transit during that specific flare, they would have received a lethal dose of radiation within a matter of hours. They had no vault, no water tanks, no boron-infused plastic. They were out in the open. We have learned so much since those early days of exploration. We have learned to read the sun's moves like sailors reading the sea. We have learned to predict its outbursts and to build these houses of water and plastic in the middle of a nuclear furnace. But even with all our technology and all our data, there is a primal part of the human brain, the lizard brain, that still fears the great fire in the sky. It is the same fear our ancestors felt thousands of years ago during a total eclipse, a sudden gut-wrenching realization of how small and fragile we truly are in the face of a star. I pull up the internal communications array, checking the status of the other Helios stations in our orbital network. Helios Beta is reporting some minor sensor damage on their sunward mast. Helios Gamma had a localized power surge in their non-essential cooling loop that tripped a breaker, but everyone is holding. We are a chain of small light candles in a very large, very dark room, and tonight the solar wind is blowing a gale. I feel a deep sense of camaraderie with those other captains, men and women I have never met face to face, who are currently sitting in their own dark vaults, listening to the same hum and watching the same white snow dance across their screens. We are the silent sentinels of the solar system. I check my personal dosimeter again. The numbers are still climbing, but the rate of increase is finally starting to level off. The peak of the Coronal Mass Ejection has passed the station's midpoint. We are now in what we call the tail, the trailing edge of the plasma cloud, where the energy is lower, that the magnetic turbulence is at its highest. This is where the station's structure really begins to complain. The hull gives a sudden sharp crack, a sound like a whip snapping in the distance, or a heavy branch breaking in a winter forest. It is just the metal settling as the sunward side begins to cool slightly from its peak temperature, but in the absolute silence of the vault, it sounds like a hull breach. I see several of the crew members sit up in their bunks, their eyes wide and white in the dim amber light. I hold up a hand, a calm, steady gesture that I hope masks my own racing heart. Just thermal stress, I say, my voice low and gravelly, sounding more confident than I feel. The station is just stretching its legs. It is perfectly normal. They nod, trusting my voice, and settle back down into the shadows, but the tension remains in the air for a long time afterward. It is a reminder that under control is a relative term when you are orbiting a nuclear explosion. I find myself focusing on my own breathing again. In, out. The air is cool, filtered to perfection by the heavy-duty scrubbers. I think about the billions of protons that just missed us, continuing their journey into the deep outer solar system, past the orbit of Mars, past the gas giants, until they eventually fade into the interstellar medium. We are just a small obstacle in their path, a tiny rock in a great cosmic river of light. We are still here. We are still breathing. We are entering the long, grueling tail of the solar. The most dangerous part, the initial hammer blow of the plasma cloud, is over, but this is the time when fatigue becomes its own kind of danger. My eyes are burning, a dry, gritty sensation from the low light and the constant, hypnotic flickering of the phosphenes. I have started to see patterns in the camera static, ghostly shapes that look like faces, or maps of distant continents, or the flickering shadows of trees. I know it is just my brain trying to find order in the chaos. a phenomenon we call pareidolia. The human mind hates randomness. It desperately wants to find meaning in the noise, even when the noise is just the sun screaming into a lens. I look away from the screen, closing my eyes for a moment to rest them, and focus instead on the steady green light of the life support indicator on the wall. Green means life. Green means we are winning the war of attrition. I think about the long-term effects of the dose we have taken today. In a few days, my body will have repaired the vast majority of the damage. My bone marrow, shielded by the thickness of my own hips and the station's water, will churn out fresh blood cells to replace the ones that were lost. My skin will shed the cells that were too badly damaged to continue. We are constantly regenerating, a slow-motion explosion of life that balances out the slow decay of the universe. I decide to do a manual check of the magnetic shield harmonics, something to keep my hands busy. I pull up the audio feed from the external sensors and put on my headset, adjusting the cups to block out the sounds of the crew. At first it is just a roar of white noise, the chaotic sound of the solar wind hitting the magnetic field at millions of miles per hour. But if I listen closely, filtering out the hiss, there is a rhythm beneath the noise. It is a deep, thrumming pulse, the sound of the station's magnetosphere vibrating like a giant, invisible bell. Every time a particularly dense pocket of plasma hits the field, the pitch of the hum rises slightly, a singing note that resonates in the very center of my chest. It is the music of the spheres, translated through the medium of electromagnetic interference. It is surprisingly beautiful, a digital choir of 1,000 voices all singing a single, low note that speaks of the fundamental forces of the universe. I find myself closing my eyes and letting the sound wash over me, a lullaby for the end of the world. It is a reminder that we are part of something much larger than our little tin can in orbit. I think about the what if again, the thought that every captain keeps locked in a small box in the back of their mind. What if we are the only ones left? What if the flare was so large, so perfectly aimed, that it wiped out the power grids on Earth, plunging the world into a pre-industrial darkness? I dismiss the thought as soon as it forms. The Earth is protected by its atmosphere and its massive, ancient magnetic field. They are fine. They are watching the lights in the sky and wondering at the beauty of the aurora. But out here, we are the early warning system. We are the ones who see the danger before it arrives, the ones who stand on the ramparts and watch the horizon. I feel a strange sense of pride in that. We are the scouts on the frontier, the ones who live in the shadow of the giant, so that others can live in the light without fear. I checked the time on the mission clock. 45 minutes since the first priority alert reached us. The storm is waning. The white snow on the monitors is thinning out, revealing the dark, empty space behind it once again. The stars are starting to reappear, tiny, steady pinpricks of light that look like they have been washed clean by the solar fire. The junior officer wakes up from a restless sleep and looks over at me, his face pale in the amber light. "Is it over, Captain?" he asks, his voice thick and rasping. "Not yet," I reply, my voice steady and low. "But the worst is behind us. The flux is dropping. The shields are holding. Go back to sleep. I will wake you when the sensors are back in the green and the airlock safeties are disengaged." He nods, grateful for the order, and drifts off again. He is a child of the space age, a man who trusts the machines more than his own senses, and in this environment he is right to do so. The machines are our extensions, our eyes and ears in a world we were never meant to inhabit. I record the final entry for this block of the log, my voice a quiet whisper against the background hum. Status: stabilization in progress. Radiation levels declining steadily. Shielding integrity at 92%. The sun is quietening. We have endured the peak. I lean my head against the bulkhead, feeling the cold through the padding. I am tired, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that goes far beyond the physical. But it is a good tired. It is the exhaustion of a job well done, of a storm weathered and a crew kept safe. I listen to the station's breath, the slow, steady hum of the life support, and for the first time in an hour, I allow myself to truly relax. The storm is passing. The dark is safe again. The stars are coming back. The feeling of the station is changing now. The aggressive, high-pitched whine of the struggling electronics has smoothed out into a familiar low-frequency purr. I can hear the thermal shutters on the outer hull beginning to cycle, a distant clank, 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 as they prepare to open and let the heat out. We are still in the vault, and we will stay here for another few hours just to be safe, but the sense of immediate, pressing danger has lifted. I find myself thinking about the long-term mission, about why we were out here in the first place. We are here to understand the sun, to study the very fire that just tried to consume us. It is a strange relationship, like a moth studying a flame. We need its energy, its light, its gravity, but we must always respect its power to destroy. I look at the crew, sleeping soundly now, and I feel a profound sense of peace. We have navigated the unseen currents of the solar wind. We have stood in the path of a celestial tidal wave, and we are still standing. I watch the green light on the monitor, a steady, unwavering beacon in the dark. It is enough. For now, it is enough. I close my eyes and let the silence of the vault wrap around me, a thick, protective blanket of my own. The sun is still there, but it is a distant fire again. The watch continues. The mission clock on the bulkhead of the vault shows. The peak of the Proton storm has moved beyond our local coordinates, and the snow on the monitors has thinned to a light, occasional flurry. It is the beginning of the end of this event. I can feel the change in the station's atmosphere. The oppressive, heavy feeling of the radiation flux is lifting, replaced by the familiar, cold efficiency of standard operations. The magnetic shield generators, which have been roaring in a subsonic frequency for nearly an hour, are starting to ramp down. The vibration in the floor plates has shifted from a frantic, high-pitched buzz to a low, melodic thrum. It feels as if the station is taking its first deep breath after being submerged in a sea of fire. I stay in my seat, however. Experience has taught me that the tale of a coronal mass ejection can be unpredictable. You do not leave the shelter until the numbers stay in the green for a full 10-minute cycle. I spend this time checking the status of our external instrumentation. Many of our peripheral sensors, the ones not protected by the primary lead housings, are dead. They were sacrificed to give us the data we needed to survive the peak. I see error 404, sensor not found, scrolling across my tablet in a dozen different subsystems. It is a small price to pay. We'll have to go on EVA cervicular activity in a few days to replace them, but for now, they are just silent witnesses to the sun's fury. I think about the sheer amount of energy that just passed through our sector. If we had been outside, the ionizing radiation would have stripped the electrons from our very atoms. But here, protected by our liquid walls and plastic layers, we are merely tired. I watch the crew as they begin to stir. The geomagnetic is checking everyone's vitals, moving quietly in the amber light. I see him nod as he reads the dosimeter badges. No one has exceeded their quarterly limit. We have won. The smell in the vault has changed. It is no longer just the sharp tang of ozone. There is a stale, humid quality to the air. With 20 people breathing in a confined, lead-lined space for an hour, the CO2 levels have climbed. The scrubbers are working, but they are optimized for the main station, not this emergency bunker. I feel a slight headache forming behind my eyes, a common side effect of high CO2 and the lingering stress of the event. I adjust the ventilation settings, forcing a bit more air into the vault from the secondary reserve tanks. I hear the hiss of the valves, a clean, sharp sound that cuts through the hum of the electronics. It is the sound of the world opening up again. I find myself thinking about the what-if one last time. What if we had not seen it coming? What if the L1 satellite had failed? We would have had 8 minutes, just enough time to hear the alarm and die. But the system worked. The technology, the math, and the human vigilance all held the line. I pull up the solar telemetry. The active region on the sun is still glowing with a fierce, angry light, but the magnetic loops have settled. The reconnection event is over. The sun is like an old man settling into a chair after a violent outburst of temper. It is still dangerous, still unpredictable, but the immediate threat has dissipated into the vastness of the solar system. I think about the particles we just weathered. They are now millions of kilometers away, heading toward the outer planets. Perhaps they will strike the moons of Jupiter, creating brilliant auroras in the Jovian sky. that no human will ever see. Or perhaps they will simply drift till they reach the edge of the heliosphere, merging with the interstellar wind. We are just a tiny footnote in their long, lonely journey. I check the clock again. 3 minutes of solid green. The air is getting fresher. The snow on the cameras is almost gone, revealing the sharp, cold beauty of the stars once more. They look different after a storm, steadier, somehow, more permanent. I lean my head back and close my eyes, listening to the rhythmic clicking of a cooling fan. We are almost there. The 10-minute safety window has finally closed. The numbers on my display have remained a steady, beautiful green. The radiation levels outside the vault, in the main corridors of Helios Alpha, have dropped back to baseline cosmic background levels. It is time to reclaim the station. I reach for the manual override on the vault door. My hand is steady now, the adrenaline of the last hour having faded into a calm, professional focus. I turn the heavy locking wheel, and I can hear the massive bolts sliding back into their housings with a deep, resonant clunk. It is a sound of liberation. The hydraulics hiss as the door slides open, revealing the primary junction of Sector 1. The air that rushes in is cool and carries the faint, familiar scent of the station, a mix of machine oil, cold metal, and the endless, sterile smell of the life support system. It feels like coming home after a long, dangerous journey, even though we only move 20 meters. I step out into the corridor, my boots making a sharp, echoing sound on the deck plates. It feels far too loud after the muffled quiet of the vault. The lighting in the corridor is still in hardened mode, a dim, pulsing crimson, but I can see that the station has survived mostly intact. There is no smoke, no smell of burned insulation. The magnetic shielding did its job perfectly. I walk toward the nearest environmental console and tap the screen. It flickers for a second, a casualty of the bit-flipping particles, before resetting and showing me the status of the habitat ring. Everything is nominal. The pressure is holding at 101 kilopascals. The temperature is 22 degrees. The oxygen-nitrogen mix is stable. I issue the all-clear over the station-wide comms. My voice sounds strange to me, echoing through the empty halls. All personnel, the radiation event has concluded. Transition to standard operations. Engineering teams to damage control stations for initial assessment. I watch as the crew begins to spill out of the vault behind me. They move slowly, their eyes squinting in the dim light, their faces showing the peculiar mix of exhaustion and relief that follows a near miss. They do not talk much. There will be time for that later. For now, there is only the work. I head toward the bridge, passing through the galley, the science labs. I notice a few things that were not there before. A screen that is permanently frozen on a static image, a flickering overhead light that refuses to stabilize. These are the scars of the storm, the physical evidence of the solar wind's passage. They are minor, easily fixed, but they serve as a reminder that we are never truly in control out here. We are only guests. I reach the bridge door and pause for a moment, looking out through the small observation port. The sun is visible, partially occluded by the station's shadow. It looks peaceful now, a golden orb in the black, but I know better. I know the power that hides beneath that surface. I enter the bridge, and the consoles begin to wake up as I pass. I tap the master reset for the main display, and the giant screen at the front of the room flickers to life, showing the long-range view of the solar system. The snow is completely gone. The view is crystalline, sharp, and terrifyingly vast. I checked the primary computer's logs. It recorded over 4,000 single event upsets during the last hour, 4,000 moments where the sun tried to rewrite our programming, but the error correction held. The triple redundancy systems worked exactly as they were designed to. I feel a deep sense of gratitude for the engineers back on Earth, who spent years thinking about every possible way this station could fail, and then building a way to prevent it. I take my seat in the captain's chair, the leather cool and firm. The station is ours again. The storm has passed, and we're still here, orbiting our star, watching and waiting. I am sitting on the bridge now, the only one here for the moment. The rest of the crew is busy in the lower decks, running the post-event checklists and checking the integrity of the solar array motors. The lights have finally returned to their standard soft white, and the crimson glow of the emergency mode is just a memory. I look at the main view screen. The sun is there, centered and majestic. Through the filtered lenses of our external cameras, I can see the fading remains of the flare, a ghostly, shimmering ribbon of plasma that is slowly dissolving into the background radiation of the system. It looks like an aurora in the void, a silent, beautiful epitaph for the storm that almost took us. It is hard to believe that something so beautiful could be so lethal. But that is the nature of the cosmos. It does not care about our definitions of beauty or danger. It just is. I pull up the final radiation report for the log. Total cumulative dose for the station, 8.2 millisieverts. It is less than a single CT scan back on Earth. We were lucky, and we were prepared. I record the final entry for the captain's log. Date, 3rd cycle, 47th day. Time, 3:40 a.m. The X-class solar event has concluded. All systems are returning to nominal status. No injuries reported. Minor hardware degradation in external sensor arrays 4 through 9. We have resumed our primary mission of solar observation. The sun is quiet, for now. End log. I save the file and send it to the encrypted burst transmitter. In a few minutes it will reach Earth, and some technician in a brightly lit office in Houston or Geneva will breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that Helios Alpha is still on the map. I find myself thinking about the biology of it all one last time. In my body, and in the bodies of my crew, trillions of cells are currently busy. They are checking their DNA, repairing the tiny breaks caused by the stray particles that made it through the shield. It is a silent, microscopic reconstruction project, happening while we go about our daily routines. We are resilient creatures. We have taken the worst the sun could throw at us, and we are still functional, still curious, still here. It makes me feel a strange sense of kinship with the early explorers who crossed the oceans in wooden ships, trusting in the stars and their own calloused hands to see them through the storms. We have better ships, and we have the math, but the spirit is the same. It is the drive to see what is over the horizon, even if the horizon is a billion kilometers away. I lean back in my chair and look out at the stars. They are so steady, so unchanging. From this distance, the universe looks like a place of perfect order, but I know it is a place of constant, violent change. We are living in the atmosphere of a star, caught in its magnetic breath, and yet we have built this tiny bubble of life and logic. I feel a wave of sleepiness finally washing over me. The adrenaline is completely gone now, leaving behind a heavy, satisfied exhaustion. The station is humming its normal tune, a peaceful, low-frequency song that tells me everything is okay. The air is fresh, the temperature is perfect, and the sun is just a star again. I will stay here for a few more minutes, just watching the light of the sun reflect off the edge of our remaining solar panels. It is a golden, brilliant light. I will go to my quarters soon, and I will sleep a deep, dreamless sleep, knowing that the shields are holding and the watch is in good hands. The storm is over. The dark is quiet. We are safe. Good night, Helios. Good night, Earth.